Hello, my name is Francis Widdowson, and I was a professor at Mount Royal University from 2008 to 2021 when I was fired. I'm not able to talk about my case, about my MRU case in this video, but I wanted to talk to you about something very important that involves universities in Alberta and in Canada as well. And this concerns what is happening at the University of Lethbridge. For people who are unaware of this, on February 1st, 2023, I was supposed to be giving a talk at the University of Lethbridge on how wokeism threatens academic freedom. And that talk, the space that was provided for that was rescinded by the president of the University of Lethbridge. And there was a whole sequence of events that occurred that resulted in an exposure of the terrible problems that are facing that academic institution. And what I want to do today is to talk to you about this in the context of an event that is happening tomorrow, which is Saturday, March the 2nd, 2024. And that talk is going to be on Zoom, and you can get the link for that talk either from myself or from Robert Thomas, who is the president of the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship. That talk I will be giving tomorrow. I'll be giving a presentation on the University of Lethbridge situation. And then Tony Hall, who is a professor emeritus at the University of Lethbridge, who was pushed out of that university in 2018, and Paul Viminitz, who was a professor there, who was fired in January of 2024, they will be responding to the presentation that I am going to be giving. But as I was compiling all the information for my presentation, I realized that it's becoming a very complicated bunch of documents. And so what I wanted to do in this video is just give an overview of most of these documents. So I won't be able to have the time to go into these in detail tomorrow, March 2nd. So what you can do is you can refer to these documents at your leisure, or you can refer to them before the presentation to give you a sense of the kinds of problems that the University of Lethbridge is facing. I think people who see universities as being elite institutions and that don't really have any impact on them should be very concerned about what is happening at universities today, because universities are one of the main bulwarks against the autocratic tendencies that are increasing within Canada. And if we lose our universities, we will see a rapid increase in these autocratic tendencies. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen so that you can see some of these documents that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. These are I have, these are a whole bunch of different documents which are going to be difficult to talk about, but I will give you a sense of the various documents that are involved. So where I'm looking at to get these documents is in a website called www.wokeacademy.info. So that's the website. All these documents are on this website. And there's a whole bunch of different pieces of information that are available. The Francis Widdowson firing is on here, a number of videos that have been done with respect to rational space disputations. Those are all there. But what we are interested in is the posts, the recent posts, which are in the right-hand side of the website. And the one that we are concerned about primarily is the post documents for upcoming Francis Widdowson YouTube video. So this is the YouTube video. These are the documents for this video. What I'm going to do is just click on this area here, and we're going to go into this area now. So this is going to be the first slide that I'm going to be having for my presentation, which is going to be tomorrow, March 2nd, 2024 at 2 to 4 p.m. Mountain Time. And what this does here is it has three parts to this post. One is a page of an overview of the documents. So this is just to give you an overview of the documents that provide the evidence for my presentation. That's the first area. The second area is a link to the main post that we're going to be looking at, Academic Freedom Destroyed, the University of Lethbridge Clown Show. And I have talked about this a couple times because people have said it's disrespectful for me to refer to the University of Lethbridge as a clown show, and it's disrespectful for me to refer to people who are involved in this as clowns. But I think that there is no reason to respect the University of Lethbridge or the people that were involved. They should all be ashamed of themselves and embarrassed. And I think calling it a clown show and these people are clowns is a way of indicating how little respect I have for this institution and the people are running this institution. So that's the main post that we're going to be going into, or the main link that we're going to be going into. And then the third area is all of the background evidence. And I'm just going to show this to you now so that you're aware of what is in this particular link. And this is what's called the Certified Record of Proceeding, which is provided by the law firm that the University of Lethbridge has retained to fight the charter challenge, which is going to be happening in February 2025. And if you go into this is how these PDF viewers work. You go into the presentation mode, this little chevron on the right-hand side. You go into a presentation mode, and what it does is it shows you, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of descriptions of what these documents are. And then on the right-hand side, you'll have a number. So that number will be what's actually on the documents. And you'll have things like, the provost's email to Paul Viminitz about the rescinding of space. And then there's numerous kinds of elements, the announcements of the president, and then the specific emails that I have extracted to talk to you about in the other post that I have. So, this is that's that third post. So that is the third link that is available, and you might not even want to look at it, but it's there if you want to check to see that I haven't misrepresented the clown show that is going on at the University of Lethbridge. So that's the third kind of area of this post. The first area is just an overview of the documents that I have extracted for the post that I'm going to be spending most of my time on today. And basically, there are, I believe, 4 different areas. General documents, the Tony Hall's unjust suspension documents, third, documents for the Widdowson affair, and fourth, the Paul Viminitz firing and aftermath documents. So those are the 4 categories of documents that are available. And what I've done is I've just shown you, in the case of the Widdowson affair, which is the most kind of complex area that I'm going to be looking at, we have documents pertaining to the internal threats to academic freedom. And there are 4 internal threats from administrators, unions, professor ideologues, and indoctrinated students and their organizations. Those are the internal threats. And we have posts on the wokeacademy.info site that these pertain to. Sometimes we have PDFs of various student organizations, for example. And then when we get into the external, there's external threats, which are from the EDI lobby. We have 2 links that are provided. So this isn't actually going into those links. It's just stating that these are the documents that are being used with respect to the Francis Widdowson affair. So you have a summary that's available. And then finally, the documents that are available with respect to the Paul Viminitz firing and aftermath, which are YouTube videos and also wokeacademy.info posts. So all of these documents that I'm talking about here are available on this first link, which is here, which is Academic Freedom Destroyed, the University of Lethbridge Clown Show. So there is an actual post on the wokeacademy.info site about this. The link to that post is provided here, and I'm just going to go into that right now and show you the various documents that I have summarized on that first one pager that is just above this link. So let's go into this link for Academic Freedom Destroyed, the University of Lethbridge Clown Show. Okay, so as I mentioned with respect to that summary, we have the general documents, right? That's the actual slides, the lecture slides that I'm going to be using tomorrow. And then we have the notes that I provided, 6 pages of notes which speak to these slides. And you're welcome to take a look at those. Those are relatively straightforward. For the second area that I was mentioning, this is the first part of my presentation, I am going to be looking just very briefly at Tony Hall's unjust suspension. And there's one document that I have pertaining to that, and that is from Owen Holmes, who was a previous provost at the University of Lethbridge. And this is a very, very damning document pertaining to the University of Lethbridge and what's been going on there since 2016 or even earlier. And Holmes outlines all the procedural problems that existed with respect to the Tony Hall case. And what I'm going to be arguing is that those procedural problems form the basis of why we had this clown show on February 1st, 2023. Okay. And in terms of the Tony Hall case itself, we're going to be having another event where Tony Hall is going to present the various aspects of his case. And then I will be commenting on that, and Paul Viminitz will be commenting on that. And then we're going to have a event with Paul Viminitz, and then Tony Hall, and I will be commenting on Paul Viminitz's case. But right now, I'm just showing the linkages between the February 1st, 2023 cancellation and the Tony Hall case. And that is drawn from this document by Owen Holmes. The main part of my presentation tomorrow, March 2nd, is going to be about what Paul Viminitz calls the Viminitz affair. And I've got the subtitle, Send in the Clowns, because all of the people that were involved in the cancellation, they should be seen as clowns, because that's what they are. They are not serious academics. They should not be controlling what happens at an academic institution. And here we see the 4 destroyers of academic freedom internally. So these are the internal destroyers, which are administrators, unions, professor ideologues, and then finally indoctrinated students and their organizations. So those are the 4 destroyers internally. And then we have the actual external pressures. So those are the external pressures, which is the EDI lobby. So what I would like to do now is I just want to briefly go into some of these documents so that you can see what form the basis of my arguments that, the University of Lethbridge is not an academic institution anymore, and really needs to have some serious intervention happen. It begins with the 37 University of Lethbridge administrators. And if you go into that link, what you will see is, first of all, we have the organizational chart, University of Lethbridge. And you can see here from this organizational chart, this is really incredibly administratively heavy. And this is part of the nature of the corporation, the corporatization of the university. And there's just all these these are just the various departments at the University of Lethbridge. And then what I did is I just went through all of the emails in the record of proceedings, and I just identified all the administrators that were involved. And there were 30, there are actually 37. 36 are available here, but there was another administrator who I thought was a professor, but it's actually an administrator, a professor who became an administrator. So that is the 37 U of L administrators. And then we have Matthew Letts, Dean Matthew Letts, who was the Dean of Arts and Science. He has been called by Paul Viminitz as not the sharpest pencil in the box. And the one thing to say in favor of Dean Letts is that he was the one administrator who argued that my talk on February 1st should go forward. So he was the one lone voice who was making that argument. However, he's supposed to be a leader. It's not easy for him, but he's supposed to be a leader, and he just succumbed to all the ideological pressures. And part of this is his own doing, as we can see if we go into this link about his pandering. And one of the worst things that Letts did was, and I'm just going to go into this document, which will show this, is that on May 31st, 2021, Dean Letts put out an email to the whole arts and science faculty, which was talking about the discovery of the remains of 215 children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, and referred to this as an atrocity. And so this is the kind of pandering that has gone on with respect to this area, which is this has been completely made up by the Kamloops Band in order to extract transfers from the government pertaining to this whole unmarked graves area. There is no evidence of any unmarked graves in this apple orchard at Kamloops. And having university administrators make all these kinds of announcements was what made it so difficult for me to come and try to give this talk on February 1st, 2023. This was most of the opposition to my talk, was that you could not have honest discussion about what was declared to be the atrocity of the unmarked graves. So that is the post on the Matthew Letts situation with respect to administration. Second destroyer is the unions. So the worst union, well, let's just go into the union involvement. We can see a little bit here. The worst is, of course, the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association, which is a major captured union, which is not protecting academic freedom at all at that institution. And you'll see from this announcement that they put out on January 30th, they referred to my proposed talk as a harmful controversy, unwelcome and hurtful speech. And then the fact that my words could be, people would be harmed by careless and dehumanizing speech. So they're referring to my presentation as being careless and dehumanizing, which is an outrageous claim with no evidence. And to put out for a union to put out that type of statement in complete contravention to academic freedom principles, open discussion, critical thinking, is absolutely outrageous, and was one of the reasons why my talk was canceled on February 1st, or the room was rescinded for that talk. Anyway, there's numerous other unions that were involved besides the University of Lethbridge, and you can find that in that particular link. We have the professors, the professor ideologues, number three, and I'm going to do another video on this specifically because it's just too much to get into. One of the most important of these professor ideologues is Dr. Carolyn Hodes, who I did a number of posts around what she was doing, because she is acted in a completely outrageous fashion. And the fact that we have professors at the University of Lethbridge who are behaving in this way shows that this is not an academic institution anymore, not able to protect academic freedom. And it's pressure from people like Carolyn Hodes that has resulted in the union not being able to protect the academic freedom of its professors. final internal academic freedom destroyer is the students' associations, the various student unions, and the main one, of course, is the University of Lethbridge Students' Union. This was prepared by Carvey Batt, and she claimed in her presentation that this was authorized by the Students' Union. And according to Jonah Pickle, this is false. This never happened. So either Carvey Batt or the executive of the Students' Association or Students' Union, they were the ones who decided to give that presentation. But it was not something that was agreed upon by all the members of the General Assembly of the Students' Union. Anyway, that is something to look at in terms of these indoctrinated students and how they behave at the University of Lethbridge. But that's not the only students' organization that was involved. There was the University of Lethbridge Education Undergraduate Society and also the University of Lethbridge Academically Employed Graduate Students' Union. Jen Prosser, who was the chair of, I think, one of the committees for this union, is a student of Carolyn Hode's. So we can understand a little bit as to how these students are becoming indoctrinated by looking at the professors that are supervising them and teaching them. And then finally, we have the University of Calgary Students' Union, which became involved in supporting what it was that the University of Lethbridge Students' Union president did. So that is the fourth internal pressure on the University of Lethbridge. External pressures, which used to be the main academic freedom threat, was from external actors. This still is a problem, and it's made much worse by the fact that there are a number of vice provosts at the University of Lethbridge, vice provost of equity, diversity, inclusion, vice provost of Iniskim University Indigenous Relations. Iniskim, for people who don't know this, is the Indigenous name for sacred buffalo stone. And there's a movement to have it called Iniskim, like the university be called Iniskim, and that gives you a sense of the corporate branding of the University of Lethbridge. Anyway, and then we have the vice provost of students, who's this Kathleen Massey, who's been heavily involved in the various kind of cancel culture types of maneuvers that have been going on at this university. So when we go into this link for this area, what we see is the involvement of Leroy Littlebear, who is the vice provost in Niskim Indigenous Relations. He is one of the main linchpins between the university and then all the external pressures that are being placed on the university by these various indigenized areas. And as you'll see from this presentation, one of them is what's called the Navigator Team, which is people who represent the community in terms of the various communities, indigenous communities, in terms of helping indigenous students find employment and also get through their academic types of requirements at the University of Lethbridge. Anyway, that kind of gives an overview of what was happening with respect to that kind of discussions that were happening. And one of the main figures, as I mentioned, in facilitating the cancellation of my talk was this vice provost, Leroy Littlebear, who has loomed large at the University of Lethbridge in the creation of the Native American Studies program in the 1970s. So he's been around for a long time. And his ideas on Indigenous science, I can't say, I'm not going to comment too much on his other work that he's done, but over the last 10 years, he's been involved heavily in what's called, quote unquote, Indigenous science. And this is absolute nonsense. And I've been talking about this for a number of years, and I sort of saw Leroy Little Bear, and he refers to himself as Dr. Little Bear, and he doesn't have a doctorate. This is an honorary degree that he's referring to. I used to see him as harmless, but now he is the vice provost who has been actively involved in trying to stop academic discussion from happening on various Indigenous issues. And so what I've done here is I have posted one of his articles, Jagged Worldviews Colliding. And in this article, Little Bear is talking about the importance in Aboriginal culture of sharing and strength and honesty and kindness, and how one needs to respect, other ways of knowing, and this ethic of non-interference is respect for others' knowledge. And what I'm showing here is that these kinds of ideas that he's putting forward in this article are completely inconsistent with how Little Bear has acted with respect to shutting down ideas at the University of Lethbridge. And then what I've done is I've provided a whole bunch of emails that were going back and forth between these, what's called these education navigators and employment navigators, and Little Bear, Vice Provost Little Bear, and their kind of active involvement in trying to get my talk canceled. And one of the things that you will see is that Little Bear forwarded Carolyn Hodes's outrageous email about how I was fired from MRU for my racism and so on, which is totally false, defamatory, and this is being facilitated. And then, of course, President Mann, who was just an absolutely embarrassing president who should never be in charge of an academic institution, thanks the vice provost for sending him this email, and that says that this is very helpful and thank you for your input. So all these emails that were being exchanged, which are in complete opposition to Little Bear's words in this article, Jagged Worldviews Colliding. I've watched 3 videos of Little Bear, which I'm going to post as well, which just shows completely vacuous types of ideas that are very harmful to students. And we should be concerned about this because Little Bear was from what I can tell, I have a thesis that was supervised by him. And this is taking seriously all these ridiculous ideas about Indigenous science. And one of the claims that Little Bear makes is that the verb-based character of Indigenous languages, many Indigenous languages, makes them able to understand quantum mechanics. And Indigenous groups before contact were pre-literate. They did not have numbers. They had one, few, and many. They did not have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then decimals, and then all sorts of calculations. And of course, if you're going to take physics, you would know that you have to take calculus, you have to take advanced mathematics, very, very difficult mathematics. And to suggest that, pre-numerate groups somehow have some understanding of quantum mechanics is absurd. And these understandings of quantum mechanics did not just come about because someone woke up one morning and said, Eureka, I now have an understanding because of my verb-based language of quantum mechanics. Is because they've studied all the various developments in physics and have come to this conclusion. And James Trefil, who is a person who has a article in this book that I edited, Indigenizing the University, he says that physics, the language of physics is mathematics, and whether you have a verb-based or non-verb-based language, if that is in fact the case, will have nothing to do with the ability of physicists to talk to one another about quantum mechanics. So that is giving us a bit of a sense of the documents that are pertaining to the part of my presentation, which is going to be on the Francis Widdowson affair, or the Widdowson affair, what Paul Viminitz calls the Widdowson affair, and the various destroyers of academic freedom. The final area of this post is on the section of my presentation, which is going to be looking at the Paul Viminitz firing. And you will see here that we have the interview that I did with Paul Viminitz, and this is on YouTube. There's a link to that. There's a link to Paul Viminitz's proposed grievances. And I'm just going to go into this because although one grievance was taken forward on the fact that Paul was denied space to host me to give this public lecture, there was a grievance that went forward about the 2 in-class lectures that I gave in Paul Viminitz's philosophy class. And what happened in this case is that Kathleen Massey, who's the vice provost students, which doesn't even make sense, that is an administrative position, sent an email to all Paul Viminitz's students without him knowing about it, that if attending Widdowson's potential in-class talks will cause harm to you, you may excuse yourself from attending the talks. That administration was interfering in Paul Viminitz's control over his class is completely outrageous. Paul tried to get the union to take this grievance forward, and the union refused because it says, and you'll see this from this email, that it does not supersede legislative obligations. Academic freedom does not supersede legislative obligations in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and that this concerns that one does not need to engage in behavior that will cause harm. So they're agreeing here that my behavior, which is my giving the talk about Indigenous ways of knowing whether or not they should be, that universities should foster respect for them, which is my area of expertise. I've been studying this for 30 years, first in the government, and then during my doctorate and my whole time doing research, that I have a very academic understanding of Indigenous ways of knowing, that this should somehow not, you should allow the administration to intervene because this will cause harm to students. And the fact that the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association wrote that refused to take this grievance force on the basis of this rationale. If we are going to have this rationale accepted, universities are over, because discussing ideas does not cause harm to students. Students need to be able to understand ideas that differ from their own, and for unions to be not involved in trying to stop administrators from interfering in this regard is a shocking situation. But you can see this email here. Anyway, so that is the area which I think is very, very important as part of the documents. We have another YouTube video about the students. And then finally, we had the consequences for Landon Anderson, one of the students that I interviewed in this video. He lost a job because of appearing on that video. He was supposed to be designing sets for a play, and the person who had hired him said that he wouldn't be able to do that anymore because she thought his values conflicted with the ethos of the plays that were going to be put on. Now, as a set designer, you don't have to have any values that have anything to do with the plays. It is about how well you design sets, but that just gives you a bit of sense of the kind of ridiculous things that are going on at the University of Lethbridge. Anyway, so that gives you a bit of a sense of the types of documents that are available in this one post, which is the Academic Freedom Destroyed, the University of Lethbridge Clown Show post, which basically has links and documents pertaining to all these areas which are identified on this first part of this post. So that gives you a bit of a sense of the documents that are available. So the reason why I have taken you into those documents is I realize when I'm going to be giving this presentation tomorrow, I'm not going to have time to go into all of these areas, but I wanted everyone to understand that all of the arguments that I'm going to be making on March 2nd are heavily documented, factually based, and everyone should investigate these in much more detail if they are interested in the University of Lethbridge. And for people who are watching this video, whether you be an administrator at the University of Lethbridge, a professor, a student, a member of the Board of Governors, hopefully that this is understood amongst them, or members of the government, I am saying we need to fight back against this takeover of our institutions, of which the University of Lethbridge is one example, one very, very good example. We need to have our universities functioning as academic institutions. If we lose our universities, we will not be able to develop knowledge and theoretical understanding. This will have a cascading effect throughout the entire society. And as well, we will see the real thing that is behind what is going on, which is these totalitarian tendencies. It is being put forward under the auspices that this is going to be helpful to marginalized groups, but marginalized groups need to be able to understand the cause of their oppression. They especially need to be able to understand this. And if we take away all these protections in our universities, we will see the real force behind what is happening, which is the sort of emerging fascist characteristics that are going to be imposed upon us. So if you are concerned about creating a better future for all people within Canada and even the world, join with me and these other professors who are fighting back against these totalitarian tendencies, which are becoming increasingly prevalent in Canadian society. Thank you very much.